Bonjour, Kinamaganine Ireland Indignicus, and welcome to this production of the My Math Network. Today's lesson, Chapter 10, Lesson 8, Multiplication as Scaling. Let us begin by looking at our previous session's answers, where we were multiplying by mixed numbers. One of the key details is that you need to take your mixed numbers and convert them into improper fractions. And remember, an improper fraction is a fraction where the numerator is larger than the denominator, such as 9/4 and 4/3. To do this, you multiply the denominator, the bottom number, times the whole number, 4 times 2, which is 8. And that reflects that if you drew 2 1/4 pizzas and you had put each pizza in a quarter, 2 pizzas would have 8 slices, plus that other slice there. So you add the numerator, which is 1. That gives you 9/4. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is a 4. Now you multiply your numerators just like you would any other fraction. 9 times 4 is 36, and 4 times 3 was 12. Now you divide. 12 goes into 36 evenly 3 times, so your answer is 3. And you do have a image here where you can see here's a whole one, here's a whole one, and there's a quarter of that whole one. And then you have a whole one here by thirds, and then the extra piece there. And this is the area that matches up. Over here, 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 is 16/3 times 5/4. We'd end up with 6 2/3. We have 7/5 times 19/6. We'd have 4 13/30. 57/8. Yep, I'm not kidding. Times 17/6. You'd eventually end up with 20 3/16. This is not something that I would expect you can do in your head, and if you can, props to you. You're better than I. You should be having little multiplication problems written around your page. You might even be using a multiplication chart. It all depends. See a table? Our answer is 8 cups. And we have 1 9/16 square feet, 2/3 of an hour, and then 4 1/8 square feet, and 3 1/3 pounds. Just remember to follow these steps and you'll be good to go. Let's look at what today's assignment will be like. You're going to be multiplying whole numbers by mixed numbers. And again, you'll need to do this using the improper fractions. So I'm not going to multiply 3 times 1 1/5, more than likely. I'm going to end up going 6/5 times 3, which is going to be 18/5. 5 goes into 18 3 times with a remainder of 3. And then we're going to see how they compare. What you're going to notice is that when you multiply by a number greater than 1, your product or answer is larger than the whole number. If you are multiplying by a fraction that's less than 1, such as a quarter, a half, or 5/8, your product or answer is smaller than the whole number. And I know this was a question that came up in a recent math class, but now you're seeing it put into place. On the homework, you're going to be looking at citing without multiplying, so you don't actually have to do the math. You're going to think of the rules that are talked about in class today and decide if the product of 4 times 1/7 would be greater than, less than, or equal to 4. And you'll do the same on number 2. And by and large, what you're going to be looking at is this understanding that scaling, when you multiply by a number greater than 1, your answer gets bigger than the whole number. If you multiply by a fraction that's worth less than 1, aka it wouldn't be an improper fraction, it's going to be smaller. All right, so let's get into the learning. And you should have your book to page 751. If not, pause video and go get your book. The essential question: what strategies can be used to multiply and divide fractions? Here on 751, make sure you're filling these in as we go. It is a requirement. It'll also provide you an artifact that you can use when doing independent work. These are good things to save and have available to you. So there is a vocab word at the top, and I know it's a vocabulary word because it's highlighted in yellow, the word scaling. And it says scaling is the process of resizing a number when you multiply by a fraction that is greater than or less than 1. So if I had 2 inches and I made it 1.5 times bigger, it's going to be 3 inches. It got bigger. If I had something that was 2 inches and I scaled it by 1/2, it's going to be smaller. It's going to be only 1 inch. If I multiply it by 1, it stays the same because that's the identity property. So we're going to multiply the number 2 by 3 fractions greater than 1. See if I can have it lined up just so for you. Here we go. I'm going to grab my annotation tool. And just a reminder, at the end of the annotation usage, after I've given you a little bit of time to write it in, I will mention that I need to clear the screen. That usually gives you a second or two to pause the video if you need more time. The point of that is I don't want to wait too long where you're getting bored and just can't wait for the next slide. But I don't want to be moving so fast that you can't keep up. That allows you to kind of control your own speed. So let's go ahead and multiply the number 2 by 3 different fractions. 2 times 1/5. This 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1 is 6. So 6/5 times 2 is 12/5. 5 goes into 12 twice. There's a remainder of 2. And you keep that bottom number. This time it worked out. I could have just done 2 times 1 and 2 times 1, but that won't always be the case. Now, 2 times 1.5, which is a bigger number than 1/5. Because remember, the bigger the denominator when you have a 1 here, the smaller the piece really is. Because if my pizza is in 2 pieces, or if it's in 5 pieces, the size of the pizza is different. Piece is different. So 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So we have 3 halves. So we get 6 halves, which is 3. That makes sense. If I have $1.50 and I double it, I'm going to have $3. All right, now we have 4 plus 3, 7/4. So it'll be 14/4. I'm going to put a note here underneath just so that you're not wondering where I'm getting this from. It'll go in 3 times with a remainder of 2. And I'm going to simplify 2/4 into 1/2. So notice as my mixed number was larger, my product was larger. Went from 2 2/5, which would be right around here, to 3 to 3.5. And I'm just going to title these A, B, and C. And then I'm going to put A, B, and C here. So I want you to make sure that you bring these onto the number line. So take a moment to write that in. I'll give you about a minute to do such. Give it another few seconds. If you need more time, you should pause the video. I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen. And you can see we had how this worked out. Now we're going to multiply the number 2 by 3 fractions greater than 1. Compare the products. Circle whether the products are greater than, less than, or equal to 2. So our first product was 2 2/5. The second one was 3, and the other was 3.5. Those are greater than 2. In fact, I'm just going to bring this up instead of writing it in. Each one of those was bigger than the original 2 that we were multiplying by. So multiplying a number by a fraction greater than 1 results in a product that is greater than the number. That you must remember for today's assignment. It's also useful if you like to build things. So go ahead and make sure this is circled and that you wrote the word greater. And then we'll be moving to the top of the next page, 752. All right, let's move forward. Well, in the last one, we were multiplying the number 2 by 3 fractions greater than 1, which gave us a product that was greater than the original 2 that I was scaling. But now we're going to do it by fractions less than 1. And if you were listening at the beginning, you probably know where this is going to go. So 2 times 1/4. Remember, anytime you multiply a whole number, you turn it into a fraction. 2/4, which is 2 times 1 and 1 times 4, which is equal to 1/2. I'm going to go ahead and put that right there. That's my 1/2. 2 times 1/2, that's 2/2, which is 1. Anytime you multiply, when you have the numerator and denominator the same, you simplify it as a whole number. And then we have 10/8, which is going to be 1 4/8 or 1 1/4. So what do we notice? Comparatively to the 2, every one of these is smaller. So when we are multiplying by fractions less than 1, our answer is going to be smaller. Go ahead and write this in. We're going to talk more about that on the other side. Couple more seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen. And move forward here. Let's see our answers. All of them, which are definitely smaller than the 2. And this is going to look similar to how we finished the draw it. All of them were less than 2. So multiplying by a fraction less than 1 results in a product that is, less than the number. Fraction less than 1, product less than the whole number. You must remember that to be successful on today's lesson. All right, let's go ahead. Make sure you circled that and written in the word less, and we'll move to the talk about it. Were the product of 3 4/5 greater than, less than, or equal to 3? The answer is less than 3. And I know that because 4/5, my fraction right here, let me get an annotation tool to make sure that you can adequately see it at home. This 4/5 here is less than 1. So automatically, I know that my product is going to be less than the original 3. I'm not going to ask you to write that in. And if you multiplied it out, 4/5 is less than 1. Well, you don't have to multiply it out. And probably wouldn't have, well, with the explanation, I probably would have written multiplying by a fraction less than 1 makes the product is now less than the whole number, but that works too if you want to use that. Well, the product of 2 and 2.5 is greater than, less than, or equal to 2. 2 1/5, sorry. And let's get that annotation tool again. 2 1/5 is greater than 1. So I know that now I'm going to end up with 4 2/5, which is definitely greater than 2. Let me go ahead and clear that before I move forward. And you could answer 2 1/5 is greater than 1. That's your explanation. All right, so let's look at the practice it. And you're going to practice these two. And I want you to pay very close attention to directions. I know it's a crazy theory. Without multiplying. So you don't need to solve 2 times an eighth or 10 times 1 3/5. Circle whether each product is greater than, less than, or equal to the whole number. Keep in mind the rules. The only way you're going to get an equal is if you use multiply by 1 or equivalent of. And remember, 3/3 and 5/5 and 11/11 is 1. Same thing. That'll give you an equal. And then you just look to decide if your fraction is greater than or less than 1. All right, go ahead and solve these two problems as I clear the screen. When we do these, just as a reminder, you pause the video. You might not even need to in this case because we're not multiplying. So maybe I'll just go with a few seconds. But if you need more time, feel free to pause the video and then unpause when you're ready. All right, so go ahead and do numbers 3 and 4. 2 times an eighth. Is that greater than, less than, or equal to 2? All right, now how about 10 times 1 3/5? Is that going to be greater than, less than, or equal to 10? Let's see how you did. Less than, and that's because 1/8 is less than 1. And over here it's greater than because 1 3/5 is, well, greater than 1. I'm going to do some more. Same thing here. 1 3/4 times 4, is it greater than, less than, or equal to 4? 12 times 5/6, is that greater than, less than, or equal to 1? Or to 12, sorry. All right, let's see how you did. It's greater than because this fraction is 1 3/4, is much bigger than 1. 12 times 5/6, 5/6 is less than 1. So our answer is going to be less than 12. So we get smaller. Let's skip down to number 11 and 12. You see that things are following the same. 4/4 times 5. Is that greater than, less than, or equal to 5? And the next one, 6 times 1/3. Is that going to be greater than, less than, or equal to 6? All right, let's see how you did. Equal, ding, 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 ding. Because 4/4 is the equivalent of 1. Because if you give me a pizza with 4 slices, I eat all 4. I hate the whole thing. So that is an equal. And then because 1/3 is less than 1, it's less than. Let's look a little bit forward here. Let's talk about this one just real quick. Why is the first product, so you have your first factor, second factor. Why is the first product less than 3/4? That's because the first factor is less than 1. And why is the product of 1 3/4 still 3/4? Identity property. There you go. At this point, I want you to go ahead and do the assignment. On these ones, again, it says without multiplying, so you don't need to figure the answers. You should be able to now look at it and decide if it's going to be greater than, less than, or equal to. Same thing on number 3, 4. Now, when it says explain, I would use your fraction with less than or greater than 1, depending on what your fraction is. On number 6, figure out which one doesn't belong based on scaling and explain your answer. And number 7, remember, your vocabulary checks are always the highlighted words in this section. So go find it. If you have any questions, please let me know. Please be aware that our next session is a check my progress, and this will give you an opportunity to see how you're doing. Reach out to me if you need to. Otherwise, have a minute. Minwa, Pamapi.